In Egypt, rescuers search for trapped victims after a 13-story building collapsed in Alexandria.
Authorities say at least 4 people were rushed to nearby hospitals. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Marcos administration reaffirms the economic benefits of protecting the country's environment. Philippines secures World Bank loan to achieve financial stability. Brazil and Argentina mark their bicentennial years of diplomacy. Sweden to join NATO alliance ahead of July's summit. And Germany, France, and Italy engage in raw material trade. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says protecting the environment requires a sense of ownership and understanding of its economic benefits. Vin Pascua has the details.
During the Philippine Environment Month celebration, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. emphasizes that environmental protection goes beyond the right thing to do. It also brings economic advantages. He cites the Forestry Development Project in Ilocos Norte as a template, where beneficiaries were given ownership of the trees they planted. This approach instilled a deep sense of pride and responsibility among the people to care for the environment, ensuring its preservation for present and future generations. President Marcos calls for collaboration among the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, other government agencies, the private sector, and the public to protect and manage the country's limited resources. The President welcomes new approaches such as assigning monetary value to forest lands. The commemoration of the 160th anniversary of the Philippine Forestry Service highlighted the importance of forest preservation. The event featured significant activities such as President Marcos planting a Molave tree at the Environmental Heroes Park. Vin Pascua, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
DENR spearheads the establishment of the country's geospatial database. Eden Santos reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. presides over the sectoral meeting with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources on the country's National Environment and Natural Resources Geospatial Database in Malacañang Palace. Geospatial Database Office or GDO was also introduced during the meeting which holds the said database. The GDO includes the surveillance and mapping of natural resources in terms of forestry, mining, waters, and lands. According to DNR Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga, the database uses satellite imagery and other technology to support the government in monitoring and accounting for natural resources in the country.
So, yung geospatial database po ay gumagamit ng mga satellite imagery and other tools to process kung ano po ang nandiyan dyan. For example, nasaan po ang river basins natin.
The Secretary notes that the database enables the agency to track the actual lands classified as forests. She adds that the recorded forest lands lie at around 15 million hectares. However, the satellite data quantifies it at roughly 7 million hectares. Secretary Yulo Loizaga also shows the socio-economic help of the database. Through the satellite imagery, the agency will be able to forecast and assess the possible locations for infrastructure building. She adds that it also helps in flood management as it maps the water bodies in the country with the help of the Department of Science and Technologies project. GDO currently can regularly monitor the natural resources of the country for climate change mitigation as well as deforestation.
What we're also tracking is saan ba talaga ang nawawalan ng forest, saan ba nagdadagdag. No? So we're able to do that. Ngayon po, ang capacity ng office na ito, we can actually monitor monthly.
Eden Santos reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippine government allots 464.5 billion pesos to tackle climate change. This allotment accounts for 8.8% of the country's annual budget for the fiscal year. This marks a significant increase of 60.1% compared to the previous year's budget allocation of 289.7 billion pesos. The World Health Organization, or WHO, warns that climate change will lead to an estimated 250,000 additional deaths annually between 2030 and 2050. This will be primarily due to heat stress, malaria, diarrhea, and malnutrition. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. calls upon all Filipinos to join the effort in safeguarding the environment. Developing nations with inadequate healthcare infrastructure will face the most significant difficulties with the resulting health costs. The WHO estimates these costs could range from $2 billion to $4 billion annually by 2030.
Health Secretary Teodoro Herbosa plans to request the lifting of the public health emergency on COVID-19 as new cases continue to decline. Herbosa says the World Health Organization no longer considers COVID-19 a global health emergency. He suggests that the country should follow suit. The Department of Health reports the average daily cases decreased by 20% to 492 from the previous average of 612. And out of 3,442 cases recorded last week, only 37 individuals were severely or critically ill. No new COVID-19 deaths were reported last week.
The Philippine Navy deploys BRP Antonio Luna in a W-159 Wildcat helicopter off the Palawan coast. The two assets are classified as anti-submarine warfare units aimed to fulfill maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea. According to the Philippine Navy Western Command, the tandem will engage in different tests and training activities. The regiment adds that the deployment of the said assets serves as a critical advantage or disadvantage to any hostile forces in the region.
Senator Francis Tolentino opposes the United Nations call to end the global war on drugs. Elijah Villanueva tells us more.
The United Nations urges the country to end the war on drugs as it notes that it will not eradicate the drug menace plaguing the country. Senator Francis Tolentino, as the chair of the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights, argues that UN experts should recognize and respect the sovereignty of each country. He adds that poverty will not be eradicated by ending the war on drugs, but instead will increase criminality and affect the future of the youth. United Nations Human Rights Office urges the international community to replace punishment with support in response to the war on drugs. Senator Tolentino emphasizes that the said recommendation will not result in the eradication of the drug menace. Elijah Villanueva for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A Russian Pacific fleet enters the southern parts of the Philippine Sea to conduct maritime drills. Sources say the Pacific Fleet is performing maneuvers with a demonstration of naval presence in the Asia-Pacific region. The said drills are intended as part of strengthening partnerships across borders. There were no concrete details about the number of ships involved.
The Philippines has 4 loan agreements with the World Bank worth $1.14 billion to counter financial stability on calamity, agriculture, productivity, and education. Agreement was signed by Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno and World Bank Country Director for the Philippines, Endiame Diop. The Philippines' first Sustainable Recovery Development Policy loan takes the biggest part of deal amounting to over $750 million to support environmental protection and climate resilience, maximize disaster risk reduction, and reach renewable energy goals. Meanwhile, a total loan of $110 million was issued to the Teacher Effectiveness and Competencies Enhancement Project of the Department of Education to have better access to education in Zamboanga, Socsargen, and Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The Department of Agriculture has loaned $276 million for their projects like the Mindanao Inclusive Agriculture Development Project and Philippine Fisheries and Coastal Resiliency Project. At the end of April, the Bureau of the Treasury noted that the outstanding debt of the Philippines stands at 13.91 trillion pesos to 54.24 billion pesos more than in March, indicating that peso is weakening against US dollar. The Marcos administration aims to loan 2.46 trillion pesos in 2024 and have an 11% increase from 2023. Coming up, Brazil and Argentina celebrate 200 years of diplomacy. President Putin makes first televised speech since the Wagner mutiny. And Chinese Premier Li Qiang addresses the Summer Davos Forum. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
Public Affairs program. And the star goes to Open for Business Next 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Every Sunday, 9 p.m.
Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Any time of the day, it's super saya. Lalo na kung si Ara lagi mong kasama. Magandang araw, magandang araw.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. Millions of survivors in Myanmar from Cyclone Mocha are facing immense challenges in rebuilding their lives. Access to affected areas have been restricted and aid groups are nowhere to be found. Cyclone Mocha struck on May 14, resulting in extensive devastation and claiming hundreds of lives. The UN's humanitarian office reports that only a small fraction of the damaged homes have been repaired. Aid supplies came to a halt when the military junta banned transportation for aid groups, preventing them from delivering essential aid.
In Myanmar, 1 month after Cyclone Mocha hit Rakhine State with overwhelming force, the State Administration Council has suspended humanitarian access, effectively paralyzing the distribution of life-saving food, drinking water, shelter supplies, and other relief to the affected communities. This decision is a devastating setback for more than 1 million people that we had planned to reach in Rakhine over the weeks and months ahead.
China launched a surveillance balloon over Taipei in September 2021. Taiwan's weather service captured 2 photographs showing a balloon above the capital city of Taiwan during that time. An AI company called Yaskolsky traced the balloon's trajectory. The company's founder, Corey Yaskolsky, believes the evidence points to this balloon having been launched from deep inside China. One such balloon was also spotted crossing northern Japan in the same time period.
Japan has decided to fully reinstate South Korea to its whitelist trade partners after nearly 4 years. At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the Japanese government approved a motion to revise an administrative order on trade agreements. They added South Korea back to the list, which will be enacted on July 21st. The decision comes 2 months after South Korea restored Japan to its trade white list and around 4 months after Tokyo lifted its export restrictions on key South Korean materials needed to manufacture semiconductors and displays. In 2019, Japan removed South Korea from its white list for forced labor victims issues. South Korea later that year took corresponding measures by filing a World Trade Organization complaint against Tokyo's export curbs and omitting Japan from its own white list.
Thailand's next Prime Minister frontrunner Pita Limjaroenrat said that he had secured enough support from the Senate to take the top job. Pita's Move Forward Party, or MFP, won the most seats at last month's election as voters delivered a crushing rejection of military-linked parties that have run the country for nearly a decade. To become PM, Pita has to muster a majority across both houses, including the Senate, whose 250 members were handpicked by the last junta to be able to secure a majority of the vote. Thailand's parliament is set to sit next Monday for the first time since the election, and a vote on the prime minister is due in mid-July. Meanwhile, several senators said that they will not vote for him as prime minister. Earlier this month, the Election Commission set up an investigation to look at whether Pita was qualified to run for office because of his alleged ownership of shares in a now defunct media company, where legislators are not allowed to own media shares.
New evidence links the multi-billion-dollar Captagon drug trade to the Syrian armed forces and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's family. Captagon is a highly addictive amphetamine drug or like drug. It has been a growing problem in the Middle East and has now spread to Europe, Africa, and Asia. An investigation reveals the involvement of senior Syrian officials and the Assad family. This includes intercepted messages, seized drug supplies, and testimonies from military personnel engaged in smuggling activities. The Syrian government continues to consistently deny any involvement in the drug trade. Syria relies heavily on the Captagon trade as a significant source of revenue amidst economic struggles.
Zambia strikes a deal to restructure its $6.3 billion debt owed to foreign governments. China's support as the largest official creditor played a crucial role in this agreement. Zambia defaulted on its sovereign debt in 2020, the first African nation to do so during the COVID-19 pandemic. Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema hailed the deal as a milestone for Zambia's economic recovery and growth. The agreement in Paris entails rescheduling the debt collection over a period of more than 20 years.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez meet at Penalto Palace in Brasilia. This to celebrate 200 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Rose Papa Angeles tells us more.
President Alberto Fernandez of Argentina is in Brazil to encourage Brazilian exports to his country. Argentina is a country now immersed in a currency crisis. Fernandez thanks Brazil but says there is still a lot of work to be done. He says it is not easy because Brazil has a friend in trouble. But when a friend is in trouble, Fernandez asks, what does the one in trouble do? He says ask friends for help, and friends are always there, referring to Lula. Lula, on the other hand, says the two countries have completed 200 years of diplomatic relations. He says they are working on creating a comprehensive financing line for Brazilian exports to Argentina. He says it makes no sense that Brazil loses space in the Argentine market to other countries because they offer credit and Brazil does not. Rose Papa Angeles from Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Russian Defense Ministry said they intercepted one RC-135 spy plane and two British fighter jets over the Black Sea. The ministry stated the British aircraft approached Russia's airspace but turned around when they dispatched two Su-27 interceptors. Kremlin said the intercept flight protocol was carried out in strict accordance with international rules over neutral waters and without a dangerous approach to foreign aircraft. Analysts say the incident is the most serious confrontation between Russia and a NATO surveillance flight to date. Last March, an American MQ-9 drone crashed southwest of Sevastopol, the largest city in Crimea. The United States claimed one Russia Su-27 interceptor caused their drone to crash, but Moscow has since denied Washington's accusations. 2 years, the Royal Navy destroyer HMS Defender sailed into Crimean waters. The British vessel turned away when the Russian Coast Guard fired warning shots.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has made his first television address since the weekend revolt by mercenaries in the Wagner Group. In it, Putin lashed out against Ukraine and its Western allies. Thomas Eyelikeness tells us more.
Putin delivered his speech while meeting with his top security officials. In it, he accuses the West of wanting Russians to kill Russians. He blamed neo-Nazis in Kyiv and their Western allies. Putin also had harsh words for the rebels, calling them traitors who betrayed their country, their people, and those whom they dragged into this affair. He did not mention Wagner Group chief Yevgeny Prigozhin by name in the 5-minute address. Putin did say, though, that Wagner fighters could choose to join the Russian army, leave for Belarus, or even return to their homes. He also thanked his security officials for their work during the rebellion. The Russian president says he let the revolt go on for as long as it did to avoid any bloodshed. Earlier in the day, Prigozhin defended his mutiny. He says he launched it to save his mercenary outfit and expose the failure of the Russian military. He did not reveal where he spoke from in the 11-minute online audio message. Prigozhin says he never intended to overthrow the government, but rather just show what he calls Moscow's serious security problems. The uprising is the biggest challenge Putin has faced in his 2-decade rule. Whether it will embolden others to challenge the president remains to be seen. Thomas Eyelikeness for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The White House says U.S. diplomats reached out to Russian counterparts in real time to discuss security concerns during the Wagner mercenary group revolt. Kimi Oria has the details.
The relatively rare Russia-U.S. contact came during the mutiny by Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner Group. The revolt briefly took control of a major city and threatened an attack on Moscow. The upheaval sparked fears in Washington that nuclear-armed Russia could descend into chaos. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says instability in Russia is something that the U.S. takes seriously. Kirby says there were certainly lots of questions over the weekend.
We had good, direct communications with the Russians over the course of the weekend. It's our expectation that that would be able to continue going forward. We also made clear to all our allies and partners that the United States was not involved and would not get involved in these events, and that we view them as internal Russian matters. We delivered that same message to the Russians themselves through appropriate diplomatic channels.
Kirby says U.S. officials continue to monitor Moscow's nuclear posture very closely during the invasion by Russian troops of pro-Western Ukraine. Kirby says so far there is no indication that Russian President Vladimir Putin is moving in the direction of using nuclear weapons or anything that will cause the U.S. to change its own deterrent posture. Kimi Oria for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani says Iran hopes that indirect talks with the United States will soon lead to an exchange of prisoners. This statement comes months after a rumor on a clandestine deal between the two foes began circulating. Kanani says Iran is serious about getting an outcome out of the said deal. He says both countries must have the will and seriousness to abandon and reform wrong policies and non-constructive approaches. He says that diplomatic efforts will continue to attain the desired outcome and finalize negotiations. Kanani says Iran is waiting to see if the United States is prepared to make a decision.
The House Judiciary says the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, colluded with Big Tech to facilitate the censorship of free speech in the United States. In a report, the House Weaponization Committee claims CISA schemed with other government-funded third parties to suppress American speech on social media during the Biden administration. The panel says the report focused on CISA's work during the 2020 election and the 2022 midterm elections. The panel, led by Chairman Jim Jordan, also claims the involved cybersecurity agencies tried to hide their unconstitutional activities from the public. The panel further says CISA created reporting portals that funneled misinformation reports from the government directly to social media platforms. CISA did not respond to any news sources for comments, but Jordan's committee vowed to continue investigating the matter.
The 14th annual meeting of the New Champions, also known as the Summer Davos Forum, opened in northern China's Tianjin municipality. Chinese Premier Li Qiang opened the conference, acknowledging global challenges and warning about future public health crises, given that this was their first in-person event in 3 years following the COVID-19 pandemic. The three-day summit is hosted by the World Economic Forum, but will focus heavily on China's place in the world and concerns about how the global economy can move forward despite an increasingly turbulent global political climate. The premier called for more communication and dialogue exchange to avoid misunderstanding. Premier Li, who just returned from his first overseas trip to Germany and France, is expected to continue the campaign to lure foreign businesses and private investments. He also seeks to cement their confidence in China amid rising concerns that their recovery is losing momentum.
我们完全有信心、有能力，在一个较长的周期内，推动中国经济在高质量发展的轨道上行稳致远。
As it stands, China is expected to further strengthen its gross domestic product, or GDP, which stands at 4.5%, with its GDP target for the year standing at 5%. Saudi Arabia has sent a top delegation to the event, reflecting the importance of its oil trade relationship with China.
经济全球化的发展，已经是世界经济成为你中有我，我中有你的共同体。 各国经济相互交融、相互依赖、相互成就、共同发展，这本来就是件好事，这不是坏事。
NATO will be holding talks on Sweden joining the alliance before its summit next month. This with the agreement of Turkey, which has been holding up the bid. Arlene Ocampo has more.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says he spoke to Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and agreed to convene a high-level meeting in Brussels before the summit.
Accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO will further strengthen Baltic security. I spoke yesterday to President Erdogan and I am also in contact with the Swedish and the Finnish government, and we agreed to convene a high-level meeting in Brussels before the summit. This meeting will include foreign ministers, heads of intelligence, and national security advisors. The aim is to make progress in completing Sweden's accession to NATO.
Lithuanian capital Vilnius will host next month's NATO summit on July 11 through 12. Sweden has been a NATO invitee since June 2022. Sweden's entry must be ratified by all 31 member states. Its membership bid, however, has been blocked by Turkey and Hungary. Western officials have hoped Erdogan would soften his position on the diplomatically charged issue. This after he secured a hard-fought re-election last month. Western nations, and the U.S. in particular, have been pushing Ankara to give its green light. They have been insisting that Sweden has met the terms of a deal agreed with Ankara last year. That accord includes a commitment to crack down on opposition Kurdish movements. These include the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK. These movements have been blacklisted by Ankara, labeling them terrorist groups. Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Germany, France, and Italy established a raw material cooperation agreement. Germany, France, and Italy have agreed to cooperate more closely on the procurement of raw materials as Europe seeks to reduce its reliance on imports from countries such as China. German Economy Minister Robert Habeck said that this was a move to better secure their economy by diversifying their raw material supply chains.
Viele Produkte, die wir hier in Europa verbauen und produzieren, haben eine Rohstoffabhängigkeit, die teilweise bis zu 90% oder darüber liegt von einem großen Land, China. Und es muss Ziel von Europa sein, neben der Steigerung der Wettbewerbsfähigkeit, dort eine eigene Souveränität herzustellen. Darüber haben wir heute geredet. Den Rahmen schafft im Moment
The European Union members set up a working group to discuss the extraction, processing, and recycling of critical raw materials. French Economy Minister Bruno Le Maire sees this move as a necessity in securing raw materials for the transition into a more digital and ecological economy.
Et puis nous voulons aujourd'hui engager une coopération entre la France, l'Allemagne et l'Italie sur cette question des matériaux critiques. Nous voulons mettre en place une plateforme commune pour échanger des données sur notre niveau de dépendance, sur les trajectoires d'approvisionnement, sur la sécurisation des stocks stratégiques et sur la solidarité nécessaire entre nos trois États.
This forum between three of the largest economies in the European Union would be used to exchange information on their levels of dependence on external sources, the direction of procurement, and the security of strategic stocks. The European Commission put forward proposals to secure supplies of materials, such as lithium or nickel, needed for the production of key technologies like batteries or solar panels.
Nous voulons également réfléchir à cette question du financement. Il y a un fonds d'investissement en France, il y en a un autre en Italie, si j'ai bien compris ce que nous a expliqué Adolfo tout à l'heure. Il pourra y en avoir un demain en Allemagne. Eh bien, il faut que nous regardions comment, sur la base de ces fonds, nous pouvons financer l'approvisionnement en matériaux critiques.
France has already created a €500 million fund for investments in critical raw material projects, while Italian Economic Minister Adolfo Urso said that some plans to make €1 billion or Rome plans to make €1 billion available for a similar plan.
Abbiamo parlato anche di un comitato congiunto che insieme i nostri paesi realizzeranno per sviluppare una politica comune per l'autonomia strategica dei nostri paesi e di conseguenza dell'Europa nelle materie prime critiche. Dopo questo incontro ne seguirà un altro nello stesso format a Roma sulle tecnologie digitali e quindi un terzo in Francia sulle tecnologie green.
Up next, Myanmar burns more than $446 million worth of illegal drugs. Australian police shoots down a significant crime figure. And flooding in Chile claims at least 2 lives. Please don't go away. We've got more stories from around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Sa counterpoint, mula sa showbiz, tumawid siya sa politika. Ngayon siya ang incumbent councilor ng 5th District dito sa Quezon City. Councilor Aiko Melendez.
Akala nila ang politika is bread and butter. Hindi. Kasi kaya ka nga papasok ng public service kasi nga service to the people. Pero ang nagiging ano sa kanila parang, kikita tayo. Mali.
Ngayong Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito lang sa Net 25. Puro yabang itong ating mga taga-usig, lalong-lalo na dyan sa DOJ. Nauuna yung panghuhusga, nauuna yung panghahatol kahit wala pang preliminary investigation.
Panalo tayo pag together. Walang talo pag together. Let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
In India, two inebriated biker thieves tried to rob a couple on the streets, however ended up giving them money. This is after the robbers discovered that the couple has no cash or valuable things. The thieves ended up giving the couple 100 Indian rupees, equivalent to $1.20. The incident went viral on social media. Local police are using nearby CCTV cameras to identify and arrest the two perpetrators.
Authorities in Myanmar burned more than $446 million worth of illegal drugs. Police said the illegal drugs were seized from around the country. The pile of destroyed drugs included opium, heroin, methamphetamine, marijuana, kratom, ketamine, and crystal meth. The ceremony coincides with the UN International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Myanmar has a long history of drug production, which is often linked to political and economic insecurity driven by armed conflict. UN experts say Myanmar is the world's second largest opium and heroin producer after Afghanistan.
In Egypt, civil protection forces search for trapped victims after a 13-story building collapsed in Alexandria. Authorities say at least 4 people were rushed to nearby hospitals sustaining injuries. Egyptian Ministry of Health says it deployed 12 ambulances to the accident site. Local officials say that the exact number of people trapped under the rubble is still indefinite. A fire also broke out after the collapse. Civil protection forces were able to extinguish the fire immediately. The governor confirms that the building was being used as apartments for rent during the summer season.
In Honduras, military police have started operations as they move to take over prisons in the country. Jeff Sanidad has the details.
Members of the Honduran Military Police of Public Order, or PMOP, started operations at the National Penitentiary Francisco Morazan in Tamara. This after the government announced that military police would assume control of Honduras' 21 prisons for 1 year starting July 1. Military police will train 2,000 new guards as well as following clashes between rival gangs that left at least 46 women dead in a prison near the capital, Tegucigalpa. PMOP spokesperson Jose Coelho says that the operation must be conducted in full transparency, including human rights watchdogs and the media. Coelho says all military police are strongly committed to achieve the goals planned weeks ago. The transition, called Operation Faith, is expected to improve security standards in the different Honduran prisons. Jeff Sanidad for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Colombia gives the highest decorations award to the soldiers, indigenous rescuers, and civil servants that become a part of the successful operation of finding the 4 lost children in the Amazon. President Gustavo Petro commends the cooperation between military and indigenous communities in a awarding ceremony that happens in Bogota. The rescue team received the Order of Boyoca Medal as the second highest award in the armed forces, and also a canine dog named Rugia, who located the children in the area. Meanwhile, the 4 indigenous children were found on June 9 after the search party used helicopters, satellites, and loudspeakers blasting recordings of the children's grandmother. The children are recovering at a military hospital in Bogota, as the government has announced making this into a documentary with British producer Simon Chin.
A Russian diplomat squats near Australia's parliament after they terminated the lease for the site where Russia intended to build its new embassy. Russia plans to challenge this decision in the High Court, while Australia's Prime Minister downplayed the significance. Australian officials terminated the lease as they were concerned with potential espionage. The potential Russian embassy would be located only 400 meters away from Parliament. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov criticized Australia's move as Russophobic. Federal police are unable to arrest the squatter due to diplomatic immunity.
Australian police report that a significant figure within the country's organized crime network was killed in a busy shopping district in Sydney on Tuesday. The 48-year-old was targeted and killed in a car park. The victim had connections to one of the country's largest outlaw motorcycle gangs, commonly referred to as bikies in Australia. The incident took place in Bondi Junction, a generally safe community located roughly 2 kilometers from the popular tourist suburb of Bondi Beach. Local police and homicide squad detectives are investigating the incident.
A Chicago woman who was arrested for murder after allegedly ordering her 14-year-old son to shoot a man dead in a fast food eatery was freed. This after prosecutors dropped the charges against Carlisha Hood and the teen with first-degree murder last week after shooting Jeremy Brown. Hood and Brown had gotten into an argument while waiting for food, and the mother allegedly texted her son, who was waiting in the car, to come help her. The young teen has been accused of gunning down the man with his mother's firearm at her order. New evidence came to light that made the charges reconsider, where Brown brutally pummeling Hood in the head inside the restaurant. The pair turned themselves in after cops released footage showing the minor entering the restaurant and allegedly shooting Brown in the back, where he later died. Both Hood, who was being held on $3 million bond, and her son, who was being held without bail in a juvenile detention center, were released on Monday after the charges were dropped.
One person died when members of Sierra Leone's opposition party clashed with police Sunday as voters in the West African country waited for results from a fiercely fought election. Police fired tear gas as the main opposition party's headquarters to disperse a crowd outside. David Oria has more details.
A spokesman for the All People's Congress says a nurse working at the small health clinic in the party office died after being struck by bullets. One person described the blood-stained infirmary like a scene from a horror movie. Police say the trouble started when members of the party paraded through Freetown, proclaiming they won the election. They say they tried to disperse the crowd that had assembled outside party headquarters because it had harassed passersby. As the crowd got bigger, authorities fired tear gas canisters. While voting Saturday seemed to be peaceful, both the governing and opposition parties accused each other of inciting violence at polling stations. Both main parties say they are confident of victory. For weeks, opposition politicians have accused the Electoral Commission of bias favoring the governing party. Results are still being tabulated. David Oria for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Chile has experienced heavy rainfall, causing the widespread overflow of rivers that took the lives of at least 2 people and 3 more missing. According to President Gabriel Boric, there are at least 419 people who were left homeless, while over 1,000 were evacuated to a safe area. Meanwhile, the authorities give warnings to expect the continued effect of the weather and declared a state of disaster in the port city of Valparaiso and Biobío. Residents of Spain are enduring the country's first heat wave of the summer. On Sunday, temperatures exceeded 44 degrees Celsius in southern Spain. Ralph Cornell has more.
It will be at least a week before people in Spain get any relief from the sizzling temperatures. This year, for the first time, the government is limiting outdoor work in areas that have extreme temperatures. Schools are adapting their schedules to begin classes earlier when it is cooler. Last year, several workers in Spain died in the extreme heat. The government has also announced a new department to study the effects of extreme temperatures on health. Heat waves have become more frequent and more intense in Spain in recent years. As well as the heat, large parts of the country are coping with drought, putting these regions at risk for catastrophic wildfires. Ralph Cornell from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Filipino tennis star Alex Agila advances to second round of W40 Palma del Rio 2023. Three-time Grammy winner Olivia Rodrigo will release her new album in September. And Korean group TXT set to perform in the Philippine Arena. Catch the latest in tech, sports, and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
Na natin ang tanungan sa game show na bilis ng kamay ang kailangan para manalo.
Please welcome our Tara Gamers na manicurista ng Quezon City!
Dali! Sino kaaway mo? Sino ka ba?
Paano?
Akala ko nakikipag-away ka. And again, sa lahat ng bumubuo ng Tara Game Magandagad and sa lahat po ng viewers namin, thank you very much. And this is Tara Game!
Ako po ang guest this Saturday sa Lutong Dansa. At sabay-sabay po tayo magluto at mag-enjoy sa Vietnamese dishes na aming lulutuin.
Tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's live together. So let's unify.
American firm Throw Flame invents its flamethrower-equipped robot dog. Dubbed as Terminator, the robot dog carries the firm's ARC flamethrower, which can be remotely operated. In the United States, flamethrowers are legal in 48 states, while California and Maryland prohibit it. Flamethrowers are usually used in snow and ice removal, incinerating weeds and pesky insect hives, and grassland management. Tech giant Amazon revealed its first fully autonomous robot, which it calls Proteus. Resembling a big weighing scale in a Roomba, Amazon's industrial robots called Proteus will be working alongside humans. At the demo, the robots are seen carrying a huge plastic container filled with packages to transport it to a loading truck. These smarter robots can differentiate people from inanimate objects. It can also navigate its way through Amazon's warehouse without colliding with people or boxes. Proteus has a more expressive face compared to other industrial robots. Its eyes can turn into heart shapes to express happiness or if it has completed a task. Meanwhile, its mouth can emit a happy tune. The target of the design is to make Proteus pleasant enough to work with. These advanced machines could very well pave the way for an automation revolution. It poses the risk of taking away jobs from humans. If it happens, however, the transition will be very gradual.
Filipino tennis star Alex Agila advances to the second round of W40 Palma del Rio 2023 in Spain. This after Agila wins over Spanish Lorena Solar Donoso in 2 sets, 6-3 and 6-2. The Filipino ace made quick work of the Spanish wildcard, needing only an hour and 21 minutes to secure a spot in the next round. Agila will next face fellow 3-time ITF women's singles champion Talia Gibson of Australia in the second round. The W40 Palma del Rio is a $40,000 tournament on the ITF Women's World Tennis Tour, which runs until July 2. YouTube influencer Mr. Beast revealed that he was invited to ride the OceanGate Titan submersible. It was early June when he received and declined the invitation. It is not clear who may have invited him to come aboard the OceanGate vessel. Along with his tweet, Mr. Beast included an excerpt of a text message he apparently sent to someone. He is thankful that he missed taking part of the much glamorized Titanic shipwreck voyage. Mr. Beast, or Jimmy Donaldson in real life, is the most followed individual YouTube creator on the platform. He is also estimated to be the highest earner on YouTube and known for his over-the-top stunts and challenge content. Three-time Grammy winner Olivia Rodrigo's sophomore album is set to be released in September. Stephanie Mayo with the report.
Olivia Rodrigo announced on Instagram that her second album, titled Guts, will be released on September 8th via Geffen Records. In her caption, Olivia said that she is proud of the new album. The news follows the announcement of her sophomore album's first single, Vampire, coming this Friday on June 30th. Fans have been eagerly awaiting new material from the former Disney star, who has not released new music since her wildly successful first LP Sour, which dropped in May 2021. Olivia's Sour collaborator Daniel Negro, who helped compose her hit singles Driver's License, Deja Vu, and Good For You, returned to produce Guts, which, according to Olivia in a handwritten note dedicated to her fans, was mostly created when she was 19 and filled with teenage angst. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
For the avid fans of K-pop group Tomorrow by Together, or TXT, they are set to perform in the Philippine Arena on August 13. Tickets are still available at SM Ticket store outlets and at smtickets.com. Following the concert of Filipino-American Grammy-winning artist Bruno Mars, fans of Tomorrow X Together are gearing up for their time to shine on August 13 in the Philippine Arena. With ticket sales being open to the public this month, TXT fans shouldn't let this chance go to waste to see their idols perform in the world's largest indoor arena. TXT stans have been waiting for this opportunity to show the world what their biases are made of. Ticket prices and seat plans are now available online through the organizer's page as part of the ACT Sweet Mirage Tour of Tomorrow X Together. TXT consists of Yeonjun, Subin, Bumgye, Taehyun, and Hooning Kai. Despite being newcomers in the industry at just 4 years old, they can already boast of their various awards and accolades given to them by various promotions. This August will mark another milestone for TXT as they are set in the world's largest indoor arena, the Philippine Arena, which previously hosted other top-billing Korean groups such as 17 and Blackpink.
And to send you off today, here's a quote from world-renowned chef and restaurateur Marco Pierre White. Success is born out of arrogance, but greatness comes from humility.
I don't know about you, but when I meet people that I've always looked up to and I meet them and they're humble, I look up to them even more. They become more incredible.
So that's greatness, right? Because that's success, I think, is how people view other people. But greatness is from whatever angle you look at it from, it's greatness.
And humility is really everything.
That's right, I agree.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.